In this video, we'll talk about execution without intention. Executing an idea can be very difficult, which is why ultimately not every good idea becomes an instant hit. Sometimes people decide not to do anything about their ideas and ideas get forgotten. Other times it can be external factors like lack of knowledge or mismanagement that kills off an idea before anything can happen. But external factors aside, here we will look at aspects which are under your control and mismanagement on your part may be doing more damage than good. The problem of under-communicating. We already touched upon the importance of effective communication earlier, so let's elaborate that thought a little here. The problem remains that most leaders tend to under-communicate by a huge factor. Many fall victim to saying a few things a few times, and then they think that everyone must get it, so they stop saying it anymore. However, the issue is that those who follow by example don't get it after a few times. There's so much communication going on all the time that your particular message can easily get lost in all that garble. Many leaders tend to under-communicate their vision and strategy, which means that their vision never makes it to the execution stage. An important consideration here, don't be a stickler for simply saying it verbally. Turn to other means of communication by saying it in person, on the phone, in an email, via video conferencing, and also in meetings. Lack of team involvement. So, even if you're saying it enough times, are you sure that everyone can hear your message? This brings us to another reason why good strategies often fail. Any business, whether small, mid-sized, or large, needs everyone to be on board. The same goes for non-business scenarios as well. Despite having the best plan on paper, execution can go out the window if all departments of the business are not involved. This is because the execution process needs contribution from every department, so it needs to be a coordinated effort. Remember that you cannot execute strategy alone. Do not undermine the size of your team when it comes to executing the plan. If you have a team of 6, things are fairly easy. Expand that number to 60 and things start to get trickier. Often strategy leaders do a great job of gaining support from their immediate colleagues and direct reports, but do not present equally impressive results of securing similar support from others. Many large companies view strategy as an annual activity conducted by an elite group of people who sequester themselves in a conference room. In smaller organizations, the same comes as an edict from above on which employees must act. But because execution of the strategy demands action, it requires specific people to carry it out. Lack of such involvement can easily become the cause of strategy failure. When employees are not given the chance to question high-level strategy, it can spell trouble for the company. Instead of isolating certain demographics, get the communication going through a conversation thread that involves everyone in the organization. Involving team players early on will make the communication component of the process so much easier. And as seen earlier, communication is key to making sure that a strategy takes off and delivers results. Too many times, plans do not take off with a blast, only to see communication dwindle gradually as everyone returns to business as usual. Poor decision-making. Company success and failure is dictated by decision-making. The same also applies when you think about achieving personal and not business goals. Among these, poor decision-making can kill a good strategy if people in the organization do not see it as a source of strategy failure. Given a directive of too many goals can create a situation where everything becomes a priority. In this situation, nothing really gets accomplished, but projects do remain pending. Given this scenario, it is important for business owners to know how to select, prioritize, edit, and delete decisions. If you're working on a personal goal like boosting confidence, developing leadership qualities, saving money, eating healthy, or something similar, you will also need to make the right decisions. Some things you will have to be a stickler for, while others you'll need to forego completely. Pick and choose your options wisely. So whether a decision is made solo or is team-based, it's important to make sure that you have a process where warning signals can be detected should you need to revisit your decision. Remember an earlier reference to work in progress? Well, this is where you need to have the flexibility to make adjustments and improvise according to the demands of the situation. Hiring the wrong people. Another good reason why a perfectly workable strategy doesn't work is because you hand it to the wrong person to execute. Oftentimes, implementing a new strategy involves hiring or promoting an employee specifically tasked with executing that particular strategy. But if you get the hiring wrong, then the strategy fails as well, or at least appears to do so. And because hiring is a difficult process, people just dump the strategy rather than go through the entire hiring process again. Insufficient data or overly complex plans. Both of these factors make up for poor communication. If a plan is based on wrong assumptions due to insufficient data or even misunderstood data, then the drive towards execution will be a disaster from the start. A relatable example would be miscalculating financial estimates or even the number of people required for executing the plan. An example of a personal goal could be something like wanting to travel to certain destinations without laying out an itinerary or budgeting your travel costs properly. Likewise, if a plan is too difficult to explain to others, how can you hope for effective communication and the desired result? When plans are not effectively capable of being explained, given their complexity, team members cannot be expected to carry them out as intended. A plan that has too many contingencies or restrictions will not only become too hard to follow, let alone implement. Another reason why perfectly good strategies fail to take off. Expecting results too soon. When you implement a strategy, you need to give it time to produce results. If the results do not come quickly enough, don't start to tinker with the strategy. There's often a lot of excitement at the beginning of a process, followed by a decline in interest and a return to everyday business. To keep things going in momentum, try not to ditch or change the strategy. Instead, your focus should be on preventing a loss of momentum. Avoid changing the plan too much or too frequently, as this can easily lead to losing credibility with employees or other team players. Changes should be gradual or even iterative rather than dramatic. Having said that, this does not apply to when there are clear-cut signs of warning and you need to move quickly to tweak your plan accordingly. In practice, successful execution is that which adapts to situations that emerge. Successful execution evolves, and an organization's sustainability depends on its willingness and ability to adapt. In this video, we'll talk about strategic execution, part 1. Strategy execution is much like going on a trip towards a planned destination. Time for another example. Consider going on a weekend trip, but first you need to make some arrangements. You need to decide on a destination, check the weather and road conditions, estimate travel time, and decide how many stops you may need to make on the way. Then there are the unexpected consequences to consider, such as road work, detours, and others that may delay you getting to your destination. Once you reach your destination, you will have successfully executed all the planning into delivering results. Earlier on, we touched on the different steps of strategy to execution with a promise of more details to follow. Now we'll look at the topic in a little more detail, explaining the step-by-step process. A successful strategy to execution process provides a structured approach to clarifying, communicating, implementing, and managing strategy. The goal of the entire process is to make sure that you know where you are so you can determine where you need to go. This gives you a baseline to work from. The first part of strategy execution deals with all the steps that go into setting up the stage for taking action. 1. Strategy planning. The journey of any successful execution begins with strategy planning. This component is important as it comes before taking any action. This planning component needs to consider all issues, ranging from the big and small steps the company needs to take to get to its goals, the framework they will use to keep it on track, along with the structure for strategy reporting and the frequency of strategy meetings. If you look at it historically, corporate history is littered with businesses that experienced immense growth stalls only because they followed strategies built on wrong assumptions or a need of clarity. The goal of successful strategic planning is to come up with a strategy that defines clear goals while staying away from misaligned or ambiguous ones. For personal goals, you still need to plan ahead, but perhaps in a different way. Say you'd like to volunteer more in the upcoming year. This will require you to schedule the days and hours you'd like to donate, the type of volunteer work you're interested in, and any traveling to and from the location. You need to plan this out in advance so it does not clash with your regular work-life balance and create a scenario where you're left feeling overwhelmed and unable to continue with your commitment. 2. Set clear goals. This stems directly from strategic planning, where not having clear-cut goals will make execution run amok. Whether you're an individual working for achieving personal goals or a business striving for successful expansion, your goals need to be defined clearly. For instance, your goal may be as basic as learning a new language, where you may want to appreciate cultural diversity or give yourself a competitive edge in career choices. You may want to do so as foreign languages open up the door to art, music, dance, fashion, and cuisine. If any of those are your forte, or you may simply want to improve your communication skills. Whatever the reason, you need to have a goal in sight to work towards. Once you have the goal established, you can then get to work achieving it, which is all execution. Likewise, in the business world, goal setting helps you organize your thoughts about what you want to achieve and allows you to come up with concrete steps that will help you get there. When you're clear on where you're going, it's a lot easier to make things happen. Having a goal is also motivating, as you have a built-in finish line to work towards and you can celebrate when you reach it. When talking about goals, whether personal or otherwise, these goals should be supportive of the overall strategy. For team members, they should be tangible so that everyone involved gets a sense of progression as they move along with the plan. Outlined goals should also be specific, measurable, attainable, and realistic while being timely. Working with clear-cut goals can also be beneficial in the sense that it can help weed out issues such as whether or not your plan is realistic with regards to any resource constraints. It also helps an organization establish whether they have the right individuals and skill set to execute the plan, and also gives an idea of how well employees may have understood the company's overarching objectives. As such, goals become the basis of your ongoing tracking, reporting, and performance management, every one of which is crucial in the implementation of successful execution. Any goal that creates conflict or challenges resources will limit the execution success. Communication. The manner in which businesses communicate and involve employees in latest strategies is crucial for promoting implementation. Statistics reveal that an approximate 65% of employees do not get their roles when different initiatives are introduced. The absence of an effective communication strategy can not only lower motivation, but also spark a resistance to change. Together, these factors can lead to inefficiencies in the system and raise the cost of execution. Without communication, team players can lose touch with the company's objectives and goals. Over time, both employee and entrepreneur may drift off course. To make sure that all departments stay in tune with the entrepreneur's vision and strategy, the team should gather frequently for different updates. Ideally, communication should start as early as the strategic planning itself. In fact, it should be a parallel to the process of planning. The communication component needs to be two-way in the sense that you should be getting feedback about your strategy not only in the beginning, but also as it unfolds. There are quite a few different ways that you can facilitate this communication. For instance, regular meetings are one way to go. Operational groups could gather for a daily huddle at the start of the day to make sure everyone is on the same page and updated. Executive meetings between key management personnel may be conducted regularly to assess the progress of the strategy implementation. Interestingly enough, meetings can quickly disclose whether an organization has a strong culture of execution or not. For instance, if a meeting consists of a long presentation while other attendees sit quietly, unwilling to raise questions, knowing that their own presentation will follow soon, then there's a cause for concern. This scenario depicts an organization without a culture of execution and a place where even the best strategy may fail. On the other hand, if a presentation is short and to the point with active participation by everyone present, with questions being answered and a common understanding that everyone is working on the same goals and timeline, then this team is on the path to successful execution. It's often very easy to fall into the trap of doing a great job of communicating at the start, only to see people go back to business as usual. This is why planning communication ahead of time is important, because it keeps the momentum up. At the same time, it's also important to engage key employees with targeted communication to win their support for the strategy.